Blood and Demons. That's an interesting title, is it not? We're going to learn today some interesting facts about blood. Why are we not supposed to consume blood? What's the big deal about blood? We talk about this. I'm sure that a lot of people have some thoughts about it with respect to why Jews don't eat blood. This is gonna bring up naturally discussions about kashrut and why kosher eating is so important, and why there's really no such thing as this is kind of bleed into, pun intended, why there's no such thing as so-called biblical kosher. So there's plenty of people who they don't know, and so therefore they don't want to eat kosher according to the quote unquote rabbis because that's not necessarily biblical. They want to just read the Bible for themselves and figure it out on their own and forego 3,000 years of scholarship. Which, of course, if the way, that is exactly what I just said is 100% fact and truth. And hopefully when I say it, you realize how utterly ridiculous that is. Why would we want to reinvent the wheel, especially when we just learned what a wheel was? I say we, of course, euphemistically, but think about it. If you're new to Torah, you're just now like, what? Torah? There's such a thing? You've just discovered the wheel. Like, there's a wheel? Like, what's a wheel? Oh, the wheel means a wheel is this. Oh, okay. What's it for? Oh, it's for this. Okay, why would you want to reinvent it? You just learned what it was, right? So anyway, we're going to learn why all these things are important and why it's something you don't want to play around with. Because some people, I'm sure, when they think about these kind of things, and again, we're talking about kind of kosher here because it naturally has to do with not eating blood, because kosher goes along with eating mostly. And so people probably don't think about the deeply spiritual implications of not eating kosher, right? And so we're going to be talking about that today, be discussing a little bit about just demons in general and what Judaism has had to say about that. And then we'll kind of see where else we're able to go as we look at this Aliyah. So good morning. Also, by the way, Rosh Chodesh Tov. It is the month of miracles right now. It's the first of Nisan, the first of the month of Nisan, the month of miracles. I, of course, have a teaching on Nisan, which I would encourage you to read, or not read, excuse me, encourage you to watch. And again, so here is a public service announcement to all of you Lapidniks. I want to explain something to you so that you can explain it to other people. Okay, pardon my drink of coffee there. So here's your PSA. Pardon me. I received a message yesterday from somebody I don't know, wishing me a happy new year. And I believe that the message was sincere, and because of my acute Jedi power that I possess, after years and years of intense training in the deep arts, I detect in the message a little bit of a someone trying to set me straight, because I'm a Jew, and so kind of one of those backhanded, this is the new year and not Rosh Hashanah, not Tishrei. And so, and maybe not, maybe my Jedi senses were reading into the message more than was intended. Perhaps it was a sincere someone just trying to wish a good Jew a happy new year. Wink, wink, nod, nod. So let me explain, because this time of year is the time of year in which there tends to be this militant assault from non-Jews who come out of a particular cult, who they're desperate to make Jews understand that Nisan is, by all things goodness, the head of the year. Okay, and it's not Tishrei, it's not Rosh Hashanah. That's just rabbinic, blah blah blah. And there's a couple of three things that I find just so funny that people want to they want to go DEFCON 1 on that. They're gonna die on that hill. Okay. All right. So why am I bringing this up now? Well, I'm bringing it up because it's Nissan 1, and so out there in the world, you're going to start seeing this because it's like a full moon. They just it's not the full moon, of course, it's the new moon, but they kind of get crazed and just start coming out like the zombies in the Michael Jackson's Thriller music video from the 1980s. And so you've got to figure out like what. So here's the deal. Plus, a couple people have asked me about this. Some of you Lapidniks have asked me about this. Nissan is not the new year. Absolutely, 100% biblically written Torah fact. It is one of the new years. We use that term because there's a new year for the trees, there's a new year for the wood of the altar, there's a new year for the months, and there's a new year for the year. And in this case, Nisan is the new year for the months. It's the new year with respect to counting the festivals, and it's the new year with respect to deciding the reign of kings, which is why Yeshua began his reign in Nisan. However, it is not 100% biblical fact, not the new year. The Torah makes it clear that we are supposed to blow the shofar in the month of Tishrei, the 7th month, to count the years. And I brought this out before, but if you actually read the Torah, it says in Hebrew that God says, this shall be the first of your months. It never says your year. So I put that PSA out there so that when you are out there and about, and because what happens is people will try to correct you. They'll try to say, you poor Jew, let me help you. And so you can help them understand this situation. That's really the bottom line. And it can also help you not get concerned that, you might be saying, man, for 3,000 years, Jews have been celebrating the new year in Tishrei, and Yeshua never said anything about that as to whether or not it was right or wrong. But Fred just told me that after his study on YouTube for 6 months, he's figured out that the Jews for the last 3,000 years have been wrong. Is he right? Well, now you know that he's wrong. And so I could, I put your mind at ease. You're welcome. All right. So let's look at a couple of things. We're drawing near to the blood and demons. And I wanted just to mention a couple of things before we get there and that were left on the table. Did I say good morning yet? And like the video and comment on it? I forget. Sometimes I forget if I do that. But please do that. Oh, the registration for Passover is drawing to a close. Sunday is the deadline. So if you are thinking about coming to Passover, please stop thinking about it and just do it like Nike. All right. So how many of you have ever heard that if we confess with our mouth, believe in our heart, confess with our mouth, etc.? Well, that actually is a Jewish concept. So confession is actually an essential part of making teshuvah in general in Judaism, and it's also connected with the sacrifices. So the reason, I just want to bring this up because we read about the sacrifices that we're supposed to lay our hands upon the animal and make a confession. What's the confession? The confession of sin. So the sages write about this quite a lot, and particularly it's talked about in relationship to Yom Kippur. The reason there's so much confession on Yom Kippur and what's called the Vidui, which we recite the Vidui. I mean, between Kol Nidre and the Ne'ilah service, I mean, we recite Vidui probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 7, 8 times. What's the Vidui? The Vidui is the public confession of sins, essentially, where we stand up as a community, and we go through a rather long list of various types of sins, and we all confess them together. Doesn't matter if you have done them or not, because if a Jew in our community has committed it, then we in fact have committed it. That's number one. So we confess them in unity. And number two is we confess them in unity so that if the person to our left or to our right has in fact committed that sin, they're not brought to shame or embarrassment by confessing and nobody else is, right? So it's that's a Musar point, that it is really, 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 really bad to embarrass or shame someone. Really bad. Like bad as in you're probably going to go right to hell for doing that. I'm not even kidding. Okay. So, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, we really need to be careful about that. So you say, man, that person committed a sin. And so so-and-so got online and was just lambasting him. So-and-so was letting everybody and their dog know that that person committed this sin and was just really shaming them. Yeah, and that person's probably going to go right to hell without passing go and collecting $200. And I'm not even kidding you. So we need to be careful that we don't shame or embarrass people. That is considered a really, really, really bad thing in Judaism. And the reason I mention this is because with the advent of social media is great. It gives us a chance to reach out and touch people. We can share our vacation pictures, and people tend to enjoy that kind of stuff. Hey, look, y'all look really great on the ski slopes. But the other problem with the big problem with social media is that it gives us the opportunity to run our mouth and to do stuff like that. And I'm just here to tell you, do not do it. So there's that. But anyway, it talks about here, it says confession constitutes the essential purpose of all sacrifices. So I just want to mention this because I always love to point out when there are long-held beliefs that people have that are valid beliefs and they're true beliefs, and they come from Judaism. So it's Judaism that teaches that you have to believe in your heart and confess with your mouth. That is nothing new. There's no newness there, zero newness to that. So Jews have been believing in their heart and confessing with their mouth for millennia. And so but it also brings out an important aspect. And I've talked about this a lot of times too. There is a spiritual phenomenon. There's a spiritual, a supernatural thing where if we will just confess out loud, it breaks, in my estimation, it's like 80% breaking the power of whatever it is that's going on, right? And this is particularly true when we're able to do that. We don't have to do it, right? We don't have to confess to anybody except God. Having said that, very often, if you happen to have somebody you trust, which you have to trust them, right? And you have to know that you can trust them. You have an accountability partner, you have a longtime friend, you have somebody that loves you and you love them, and they're for you and not against you. And listen, if you have such a friend, I'm not talking about a Facebook acquaintance, I'm talking about a friend, cherish such a person, right? Because they're rare. But if you have that kind of person and you're struggling, or or you're a rabbi, right? Or you're a zaken. But anyway, but you are struggling with a sin. There's something that you just, man, I'm struggling. And you name it, it doesn't matter what it is, right? If you can sit down with them, with your rabbi or your rebbitzin, or your zaken or the zaken's wife or whatever, or your friend, and you can say, the reason I want to meet with you and have coffee or talk is because I'm embarrassed to admit it. I'm ashamed to admit it. I know it's wrong, but here's what I struggle with. This is what I struggle with. Here it is. I'm here to tell you. Just saying that out loud, that confession out loud, 80% broken off your life. This is why the Satan works so hard to prevent us from confessing our sins to Hashem, particularly, and to what I just talked about. We want to hide our sin and keep it undercover, because once we bring it out to the light, man, the power of that. I just want to encourage you right now that that is a huge, 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 powerful thing you can do, and that's the power of confession. So, moving on here to blood and demons, because I know y'all are very excited about that. Probably you saw the title and you're like, blood and demons, yeah, can't wait. Okay, all right. So, how many of you know that in the last several years, like vampires have become a thing? Okay. Totally demonic. Why? Because demons love blood. Were there actually a vampire? I mean, I am by no means a conspiracy theorist guy. I'm also not naive, so I do know that there are, things that happen in the world that aren't always talked about. I'm also somebody who, and I'm not a nutcase. Can I just say that? I'm really not. I'm very down to earth, very level headed. I live in Realville. I really, 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 really do. And I also believe in the supernatural power of God. I believe in that people can be supernaturally healed and set free, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't swing from chandeliers, and I am not a fruitcake. Okay. So, having said that, I'm also not somebody who just believes that all this stuff is mythology, like vampires and werewolves and uh, mermaids and stuff like that, right? Am I running around searching for mermaids? No, but what I'm trying to say is that I believe that these were demonic aberrations. That they weren't necessarily myths, and in other words, I don't blow them off. And neither does Judaism. In fact, there's really interesting things in Judaism. When I mentioned werewolf, it made me think of it. Talking about werewolves and things like that. Now, I know we're going to get off on the werewolf thing, but there's an incident of the Baal Shem Tov killing a werewolf, a man who used to turn into a werewolf in a village. You can say, "Why? Do you believe that?" Well, it's out there. Like, that's a real story. Whether you believe it or don't believe it is up to you. But it's actually published in. I've got it over there. In fact, in my library, a book on the Baal Shem Tov. And so you say, "Well, what's the point of that?" Well, look, I just believe that a lot of these stories are rooted in truth somewhere. Okay. Now, some of you probably know a lot more about this than I do because maybe you've studied it. Some of you have got, and thank God you were in the occult. Some of you were in the Wiccan, and and you've come out of that, thank God. And now you are with us, and you're probably out there shaking your head, going, "Yeah." And so, and there's a lot of people in the Western mindset that think demons are like fairy tales, like they don't even really exist. And that's not true either. The rabbis talk about demons, for instance, and they say that if we could actually, and I don't want to freak you out, okay? So please, don't freak out here. But the rabbis write in the Talmud and say that if our spiritual eyes could be opened and we could see the number of demons that surround us on a daily basis. Now, what I'm sharing with you, by the way, I want to emphasize here because I know we live in a world in which people are just nutty fruitcakes. Okay. I am not. I just want to emphasize that right now. So, what I'm sharing with you right now comes from the Talmud. Okay. So, just know that, believe that, trust that. But anyway, they say that if we could see the number of demons around us, we would freak out because they are everywhere. Now, we're not being harmed by them necessarily because for those of us who are in the covenant of the living God, we have a level of protection. Thank God for that. But my point in bringing this up is not to scare us or to freak us out or to sound like a nutcase, but rather just to point out that this is real and we need to take it seriously. And everything that we do in Judaism has to do in part with this issue. So right before the fourth Aliyah, no, I'm sorry, right before the fifth Aliyah, at the end of the fourth Aliyah, there comes this discussion about sacrifices and so forth. And in verse 17, it says, "It is an eternal decree for your generations and all your dwelling places. You may not consume any fat or any blood." Now, let me say here, when it says don't consume any fat, that's not talking about all fat. There is a, there are and fats that we can consume clearly because we do consume fat. I mean, it's fat is in ground beef, fat is in steak, and so on. But there are other fats that we're not allowed to eat. And ladies and gentlemen, can I just pause here and say that this is a huge reason why certified kosher slaughter is essential. It's not okay, and hear me here, and for those of you who are new, I totally get the inconvenience. I totally understand it. You might live in Montana or some other place like that, Idaho, or some place where there really isn't anything, like there's no kosher market within driving distance. And so therefore, getting kosher beef or kosher chicken is a hassle. You have to order it or do without. And I totally understand that. And I wish it wasn't the case. But it doesn't change reality, right? Just because it's inconvenient doesn't mean that I can blow it off. It doesn't even matter. It does matter, because when a kosher butcher is preparing the food, right, the meat, he knows what fats that are forbidden to eat. The non-kosher butcher, A, doesn't know, and B, doesn't care. This is especially true when it comes to ground beef. For the love of God and all that's right in the world, never buy ground beef that's not certified kosher. Because A, it's full of blood, and B, it's full of the fats that you are prohibited by Torah law to consume. It's a big deal. It matters. This is why biblically kosher is foolish. You say biblically kosher just says you can eat beef, period. You can eat chicken, period. You can eat goat, period. They don't take into consideration what I'm talking about here. Or with respect to goat and lamb, 9 times out of 10, non-kosher lamb is halal. So it's been offered to the demon of the Arabic god. Who is the Arabic god? Who is a demon? Okay. And so you're eating food that's been offered. And how do you know that the food that you're eating has been offered? And by the way, Paul's little don't ask, don't tell. I'm sorry. He was 100% wrong on that. Don't ask, don't tell is not a way to get around Torah observance. Okay. Is don't ask, don't tell ever? Think about it, guys. Is don't ask, don't tell ever a legitimate way around something? I mean, seriously. But anyway, so to ignore that, right? So I get it. It's a hassle. It's inconvenient. It's a little bit more expensive for kosher meat, sometimes a lot more expensive depending upon the circumstances. Although in this day and age, it's not all that much more expensive. Okay. I think that the money thing is sometimes blown out of proportion, but nevertheless, it can be expensive. Robinson and I, even though we have kosher markets nearby, we don't necessarily eat meat all the time. We eat a lot of vegetables. We eat a lot of fish, etc., etc. So, I'm just telling you it's an important aspect, and we're not allowed to eat these fats. We're not allowed to eat this blood. So it says, the word fat is chalev, refers to the suet or the internal fat of the animals that are fit for sacrifice, including the fat around the entrails, the fat covering the kidneys and the loins, the entire fat tail of the ram. From the context, it is clear that the fat is prohibited for the same reasons as blood, namely that both are reserved for the altar. Okay. The blood contains the active life force of the animal, and the fat symbolizes the inactive physical existence. The same qualities are essential elements in the makeup of a human being, and as such, they can be offered on the altar as a sign of man's devotion and commitment to Hashem. However, it is important for man to avoid incorporating animal qualities within himself. Thus, he is forbidden to eat the symbolisms of these qualities. So we're not allowed to consume blood, which is one of the reasons why we have kosher slaughter. Now, I want to say, with respect, so people, I'm sorry, I was trying to think about the question people ask. People ask, well, can I take beef or chicken or what have you from the regular market that has not been kosher certified? And can I just bring it home and soak it in salt and draw the blood out? The answer is no, you can't. Or I mean, you can, but it really doesn't magically make it kosher. Kosher is not just about blood. It has to do with kosher slaughter, the way in which the animal is killed and so forth. And once again, you don't know if that animal has been slaughtered and offered up to a demons. Halal is absolutely offered up to demonic forces, 100%. Okay. So you don't know under what circumstances the animal has been slaughtered. If an animal, listen, if an animal has been offered to a demon, right, slaughtered in the name of some false deity, then you are 100% eating at the table of demons, 100%. Okay. You say, well, but I don't know. I read somewhere, don't ask, don't tell. It doesn't, guys. Don't ask, don't tell doesn't. Don't ask, don't tell doesn't change the spiritual status of anything. Okay. That'd be like saying, I'm going to go out with this person. I don't know if they're married or not. Don't ask, don't tell. Would you, okay, in that scenario, would you say, oh, you were perfectly fine? Of course you wouldn't. You'd be like, no, you ask, are you married? You don't ask, don't tell. Does that work there? If it doesn't work there, it doesn't work with what you eat. Okay. Because truth has to be truth all the time. So Rambam, there's a discussion here about blood and so forth, but let's get to the meat of it. Rambam also presents some quite different aspects to the prohibition against eating blood. Blood was considered by early peoples as something very unclean. Okay. Still, some partook of it because they thought it was the food of demons. In fact, it is the food of demons. There's no thought about it. Okay. By eating it, they believed a person became associated with these evil spirits and would receive knowledge of future events. Now, it keeps saying here, people thought this or thought that. This is absolutely a fact. In fact, I'll explain that in a second. They may mention it here, but if not, I'll explain how this happened in the ancient times. And not so ancient times. But anyway, I digress. It says here, there were, however, other primitive people who objected to eating blood, for it is something repugnant to human nature. When they killed a beast, they gathered the blood in a vessel or pit and ate the flesh of the beast while sitting around the blood. They are going to mention this. I forgot whether or not this was actually in here, but listen to this, okay? Because this is real. This is where we live in Realville, okay? Okay, when they killed a beast, they gathered the blood in a vessel or pit and ate the flesh of the beast while sitting around the blood. By doing so, they thought the demons would appear to them in dreams, inform them of future events, and otherwise be of service to them. The Torah sought to cure its followers of these deeply rooted ideas by forbidding the eating of blood. It enforced this prohibition as strictly as that of idolatry. So, let me just, because it didn't really, it kind of alluded to it in this insight, but it didn't really mention the actual situation. So let me go ahead and bring that down, because in another source, and I don't recall what source I found this in, but I have it. What they would actually do is they would, as it says, it was either put the blood either in a vessel, or they would dig a pit or some like a little hole in the ground and put the blood in there. And while they were eating, the demons would come to eat the blood. And while the demons were there eating the blood, yes, guys, I'm not making this up. This is true. They would inquire of the demons as to, future events and things like that. So the fact of the matter is that demons are attracted to blood. Okay. They eat it. They feast upon it, which is one of the reasons why the Torah forbids us to cut ourselves or to get a tattoo. You say tattoos, well, isn't it cool to get a tattoo? Isn't getting a tattoo today, a sign of spirituality? No. Cutting yourself is likened to getting a tattoo. Blood is drawn. Demons are attracted to it. You're attracting demons into your life. Now, let me just pause here and say, because we live in a day and age in which tattooing yourself has become like, fashionable. When I was young, back when I was a boy, we walked uphill to school both ways and liked it. But back in the day, nobody got tattoos unless you were, a criminal. But anyway, I digress. If you have a tattoo, hear me here, okay? You're probably forewarned because you realize you've violated Torah law, written Torah law. What do you do about that? Well, if you can have it removed, remove it. But, usually that's expensive and people can't get it done. It's not practical. But here's what you do. Don't get another one. That's your answer. Okay. So that's what you can't undo what you've done, right? I mean, it is what it is. And listen, some of you have tattoos and some of us have things that you can't physically see, but they're spiritual tattoos. We can't undo that, but we can make sure we never do it again, right? That's how sin works. We're all sinners, and we're going to make sure with God's help that we don't commit that sin again. And getting a tattoo, by the way, is a sin, in case you're wondering, is 100% a sin. All right. But again, if you've gotten one, don't get another one. That's because, am I clear on that? Are we okay? I'm not here to embarrass people or tell you that you're evil. We all have committed a sin. Eating a pork is a sin. How many of you don't raise your hand? How many of you have eaten pork in your life? Okay. There's no difference between eating pork and getting a tattoo in terms of sin. Understand what I'm talking about? All right. So, but I do want to mention that this whole thing about blood is one of the reasons why you ever ask yourself a question, why has tattooing become such a crazed thing these days? Because it's bloodletting and people get this euphoric feeling. Where does the euphoria come from? People that cut themselves, same thing. Where does that come from? It comes from demonic influence. Hence, we don't want to eat non-kosher food, particularly meat. Why? Because we invite demons into our life. See, this is what I'm trying to say. It's way more than just, it's beef is beef. No, it's not. If I eat beef that's treifa, I invite a demon into my life. I eat beef that's kosher, I invite the Ruach HaKodesh into my life. And yes, guys, we're not kidding. This is why Jews take it seriously. We treat it like idolatry. Why? Because it involves demons, which is what idolatry involves. It's a big deal. And we don't play around with it. Because, listen, I've got enough problems without having demons in my life. Can I just say that? I've got enough things to worry about. I've got enough challenges in my life to try to keep Mr. Griffin on the straight and narrow. I don't need Mr. and Mrs. Demon to kind of, give me some extra pushes. So I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that they stay out of my life. And one of the ways I can do that is by not getting involved with the whole blood thing. Okay. So Ramban agrees with the validity. Oh, let me just finish this sentence here. Says, there is no commandment that uses an emphatic word of rejection as that which forbids blood and idolatry. For the eating of blood is associated with idolatry, the cult of demons and evil spirits. Okay. That's what we're talking about here. Eating of blood and idolatry has to do with a cult of demons and evil spirits. So does Judaism believe in demons and evil spirits? 100%. Okay. All right. Ramban agrees with the validity of this explanation, but points out that the Torah gives another reason for the prohibition against blood and does so again and again, as it says, because the soul, the nephesh, is in the blood. From the time of the flood, Hashem allowed man to eat flesh of animals, but he did not give over to man the animal soul or the life force. That is why blood remains forbidden. Although it can serve as an atonement for man, we know too, continues Ramban, that a man's food has a certain influence over his character and temperament. Because of its unique nature, blood is absorbed by the human body in a more direct way than ordinary food. In effect, by eating blood, man assimilates himself with an animal's life force, thereby diluting the spiritual quality that comes to him from heaven. So, in other words, now we talked about demons, and now we're talking about becoming animals. So as we can see, this whole topic of what we eat really is a way, way, way more intricate than what people think. We don't want to become animalistic. And look, we talked about, and I want to emphasize that I empathize with the whole convenience thing. I get it. I don't. I'm not here. Trust me, ladies and gentlemen. I have no interest in making your life more difficult. I am not one of these fruitcakes that just believes that, the more stringently religious I can make you, somehow I feel like I have some kind of control. Just so you know, I have no like desire to control people. Like, I don't even care. Okay. I desire that you follow God, that I follow God, that we live a holy life as God wants us to live. I have no interest in making your life some type of stringent, cultic, weird, children of the corn, whatever. Okay. So believe me when I say that I want your life to be as convenient as possible. Having said that, when we start saying things like, I'm just going to go out and buy the treifa meat because buying kosher is too expensive or inconvenient, then what we're really doing, and we have to be honest with ourselves, we're simply self-gratifying. Because the truth of the matter is, we don't have to have it. Do we now want it? Yeah. Have to have it? No. Listen, it's true. There are plenty of places I would love to go eat because I just really like the food that's not a kosher place for me to eat. I would love to go there. And the reason I don't is because I can't. It's forbidden by Torah law. But if I gave over to my fleshly desire that I really got to eat, I can't do it. I must have it. Well, then that's just giving into self-gratification, right? And we all know where that leads us. So this is not about making our life more difficult. This is about not giving in to our flesh. That's what I'm trying to say here. Okay. And that I just want to make this clear. This is nothing other than that. All right. So one final insight here as we move forward. All right. This paragraph has to do with the importance of ritual slaughter. All right. And we'll conclude with this. And hopefully today has been educational about all of this. Okay. So it says the Torah treats the sin of eating blood in an extremely severe manner. Okay. But once again, we're just emphasizing this point. And once again, the reason it treats it so severe is because of demons. All right. Good gracious. We don't need, yeah, you get it. Anyway, I digress. In Leviticus 17:10, we find the penalty to be karet. That is spiritual excision of the soul. Boy, we don't need that, do we? So it says here, and so we find many regulations and the procedures for ritual slaughter and salting of meat to ensure that all traces of blood are removed. So listen, guys. Oh my goodness, this is good. So you may be out there and you're thinking to yourself, why are the rabbis so strict about kosher slaughter? I mean, eye roll, sigh. I mean, seriously, guys, now you know. The reason that it's so strict is because of the spiritual implications involved. This is something we don't want to play around with. In the same way you wouldn't want to play around with a tarot card, or you wouldn't want to play around with a Ouija board. In the same way you wouldn't have a statue of Buddha, God forbid, sitting on your mantle. In that same way, you don't want to have non-kosher meat in your freezer. Okay? And if you have it, get rid of it. Like, throw it out. So it says here, and so we find many regulations in the procedure for ritual slaughter and salting, despite the fact, in the words of Rambam, human nature finds it repugnant to eat blood, the Torah repeats the prohibition with striking insistence. The wording is especially emphatic in chapter 12 of Deuteronomy, where it says, just be steadfast in not eating blood, because blood is life, and you shall not eat the life with the meat. Do not eat it. Pour it out on the earth like water. Do not eat it, so that you may be happy, and your children after you, because you'll be doing that which is right in the eyes of Hashem. So, it says, some of the significance of this last exhortation can be seen in the light of events that have marked the path of our people throughout history. How many times has Israel had to suffer through the legend of ritual murder and the accusation of using Christian children's blood to make our matzah for Passover? The law of Israel clearly and categorically states that eating blood is strictly forbidden. Do not eat it, so that you may be happy and that your children may be happy after you. End of our Aliyah today. Well, I hope that this has been interesting, informative, exciting, intriguing, and most of all, helpful in your pursuit of truth. And maybe you've had a glimpse into the interworkings, you know, of the mind of the rabbi here and the mind of Judaism. If you don't have kosher meat in your area, you can order it online. Is it more expensive to do that? Well, sure, because you're having to order it. There is also other ways you can reach out to us if you are interested in trying to figure out how to eat kosher and what to do. Send us an email, and we can help you figure out something you could do in your area. And so just send us an email. We have ideas. We've been, so on and so forth, and maybe they'll work for you. And we hope that's the case. Listen, we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Rosh Chodesh Tov. It's the first of Nisan. Miracles are happening here. Miracles have already been happening for us, and we thank God for that. And we look forward to all the miracles he does in our life. We're going to see you tomorrow with God's help to conclude our week. Until then, have a beautiful day. Oh, Rabbi will be here at noon, so be sure and tune in at noon for the Musar class. Look forward to seeing you there. Shalom Aleichem, everybody.